I am 38 years old. I've had a great career as a high-stakes poker player and a great life alongside that, but there have been some ups and downs along the way. Here's some things that I wish I knew when I was 21. So the first lesson I want to teach my younger self is that structure is very valuable. I started playing poker as a hobby while I was in college. When I was 21, I dropped out. I was playing high-stakes poker, and it was still completely a game to me. The money was points on a screen, and I would play when I felt like playing. Sometimes I would play for 18 hours. Sometimes I would not play for days at a time. I would sleep in. My hours were usually like 4 a.m. to 2 p.m. to sleep. Obsession that I had with poker was really valuable for me. I think especially when you're young, your body and your mind can get away with more than it can when you're older. You're sleeping terribly and you're eating terribly, and your hours are all over the place. There's no predictability in your schedule. Your play suffers, but not enough that you're really noticing to the same degree that you would when you're 38. As I've grown up and I've run businesses as well as been a poker player, I've started a family, I'm much more now understanding the value of not only structure, but planning, setting goals, setting plans to achieve those goals, and taking steps towards that over time. I think it's been hugely valuable for me and would have been so much more valuable than what I was doing when I was 21. By the time I started playing high-stakes cash games in Las Vegas, I would have over 24-hour sessions, not regularly, but many times. I just didn't have to. I would sit in the game. I would feel like I was still a favorite in the game. I was enjoying playing, and so I would just stay there. Yet, if I played for 12 hours and then I went home, relaxed, got some sleep, ate some food that wasn't terrible for me, probably before going to sleep, then woke up and headed back to the game and still be running. And the hours I put in then, the next 12, would be better than the 12 I put in overnight. So I'd, play for 26 hours, then sleep for 14 hours, and then be groggy for the next day or two. My schedule got crazy. I was basically always on a 28-hour day schedule. So my sleep would shift back further every day, and I would just kind of cycle around the hours of the clock. Many of us did it, but could have done better if I was a little bit more structured. So next I want to talk about structure and planning as it relates to obsession and focus, and in my case, relationships. So in high school, and I guess my very short-lived college career, I never dated. I was very socially uncomfortable, especially in settings like that. And I mean, I wouldn't say antisocial, like I disliked people, but I was a homebody. I was a bit of a hermit, still am, to be fair. Being in a relationship and actually starting a family has always been like a big goal of mine that I've achieved now. I'm quite happy about that. But because of that, and because of the fact that I had no structure, that I made my own hours, that I played whenever I wanted, when I did get into relationships, which there were 2 long-term relationships, including the one I'm in now, I would put so much of myself into it, which is great to be thoughtful and caring and dedicated and devoted and excited about a relationship. But it would get to the point where, I'm like, I don't need to be studying. I don't need to be playing right now. I could just do it whenever I want. In both of these relationships, after about a couple of years, I looked back and was like, not that good at poker anymore. I remember about 2 years into my relationship with Farah, my wife, I played the worst session of my life that I reviewed on this YouTube channel earlier against Isildur. When I look back on it recently, I was shocked at how badly I played. And I had looked at that, and then I had looked at a session from 2011 that I'd played. And I had played better in 2011 than in 2014. It was because I had basically stopped taking poker seriously for a couple of years, because I was kind of coasting on my skills that I had, at the beginning of that 2-year period, playing casually, not being as focused, being kind of entirely mentally, emotionally dedicated to the relationship. I had to rebuild my skill from there, which actually took a while. So I'm certainly not saying don't get into a relationship. I'm not saying don't get excited, don't get obsessed in a new relationship. But what I am saying is, like everything else in life, you need to have harmony and balance with all the aspects of your life. It being a relationship, it being a new house that you're building, it could be anything, a project that you're really excited about. If it takes too much away from the other parts of your life, especially when there are parts of your life that you're really relying on, like your career, you need to make sure that you're dedicating at least a minimum amount of time to your bread and butter, to what's actually earning money. So next up, the lesson for me, I guess, is don't lose millions and millions of dollars. plan for all reasonable potential outcomes, especially when you're taking on a big endeavor. Quick backstory, I founded Run It Once Training 11 years ago. It's a poker training platform that's was successful essentially from day one. It has put out 2 training videos every single day since then, which is quite an accomplishment, something I'm very proud of. Several years into that business, I made a few mistakes, but I want to speak specifically about when we launched Run It Once Poker, which is a poker platform that you can play on, a la PokerStars, Full Tilt. We had kind of a naive plan. First of all, I think that our success with Run It Once Training gave us false confidence because that business thrived because people wanted my coaching and the coaching of the people in my network that we hired and other people we sought out to hire. So, we entered the market at a great time when other training sites were declining. We kind of had the leverage of me and some others that just made us successful. But we thought we were great at business. We liked taking on other projects. We were excited about doing other things. And the biggest project that we took on was Run It Once Poker. The plan, the naive plan that I mentioned, was essentially, let's build it. Let's get some estimates for how long it's going to be to build this poker platform. Got an estimate that was something in the realm, it was sub 1 year. We could cover our development costs as well as the kind of minimal staff we'd need pre-launch with free cash flow from Run It Once Training. I wouldn't be taking money out and profiting from Run It Once Training, but I wouldn't be putting money back in. I was passionate about starting Run It Once Poker because I was very worried about PokerStars, who had a monopoly at the time. I was worried they were headed towards being kind of a poker-themed casino, towards higher raked, lower edge games. And a lot of players were upset about that too and worried about it. And so as a player, I wanted to help set the trajectory of online poker in a direction that as a poker player, I really wanted. But as we mapped this out, we kind of felt like we're up against really big competitors. So the only way this is going to work is if the poker community is as passionate about this as we think they are. Yes, of course, if we threw more money at marketing, it would have a better chance to work. It would work on a different scale. But we really just have to test and see if kind of through organic reach, we could get something going at the beginning. And so our thought was, we cover costs until we launch. When we can save up and cover costs for the first several months after launch. And then we were just going to know if nobody was playing, our theory would be shot. And we'd be like, you know what, we were wrong. People don't care that much about this, or they do care, but it's not enough to move them from where they're used to playing, etc. And then we would just shut down. And so it wouldn't be an expensive endeavor. I mean, it would cost a lot of money over that year, but it was money that we were already making. And then of course, if we did get traction and a lot of players started playing, well, now we reach a break-even level pretty quickly. We can pour money in if we think that'll, accelerating marketing will help, et cetera, et cetera. We can make decisions then. There were a few things that went wrong. First of all, our development estimate was off massively. And so not only did we have to pay for development for much, much longer, we actually staffed up to be ready for launch because we weren't getting updated estimates that were any different. We staffed up to be ready for launch way too early. Probably we should have done at some point his staff back down, lay some people off because we didn't have a need for them. But instead, we just found other things for them to do. We found ways for them to help on Run It Once Training even, but don't fire people. By the time we finally reached launch, we launched with a partial product, again, due to development woes. The reception was pretty good at first, but we kind of weren't ready for it platform-wise. For example, we didn't have multi-table tournaments. At this point in the journey, we were burning a lot of money, far beyond Run It Once Training free cash flow. So I continued to put more money in, and we raised funds a couple of times. As we were gearing up for launch, I felt really good about where we were and felt comfortable fundraising. Not comfortable because I hate fundraising, but felt comfortable with it. But down the road, there were times where I was not very confident in where we were, and as such, didn't feel comfortable trying to raise funds. But I wanted to keep everything going and see if we could be successful. So I paid the bills entirely out of my own pocket. I wanted to keep seeing if we could succeed. We had built up a platform, we built up some user base, we built up a brand. And if I didn't put more money in, all of that would go to waste. We launched and it was going kind of okay. Not well enough, but people really liked it. So we just had to get the word out a little bit more, and we had to add these other features that were coming very soon. In business, you're just supposed to think purely logically, but we are humans. And so, we've got all this, we're trying, we have reasons to hope that it's going to get better, and we're actually going to reach our goals. And also we have a staff that have become family. I don't want to just shut it all down and leave everybody jobless and not kind of finish what we started. And so there were several points where I was putting in money that I knew was a bad investment. But I felt like on the whole, it was worth it to try to get more out of the investment that had already been put in. In the end, there was a point where it became clear to me that we were not going to make it on our own. So we decided that to keep the vision alive, we would have to sell the company. And we spent a year trying to do just that. And we were able to sell it not because of how many players we got, but because of the brand reputation we built up and the software that we built and the user experience, which is something we think are really strong with as a company, which means that it's going to live on, which I'm really excited about. But it was for a loss of many, many millions. So the broader lesson, if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're not investing large amounts of money in some project or another, whether it's poker or whatever, ask yourself, what if? What if things don't go the way that I think they're going to go? And it doesn't mean that you are not confident in where you think things are headed. But if you don't stop to question, all of the things that could go wrong, or some of the key things and most likely things that could go wrong and then how you'll respond to them, you're just going to have to deal with it on the fly, and it might get expensive, whether it's financially, emotionally, or otherwise. All right, so next I want to talk about investments. My dad always pushed me to invest some portion of my income each year into the stock market, set it aside. My stance was always, what's the market, like 7% a year average? And I'm playing as high stakes as I can, and I need as much bankroll as I can so that I can keep playing high stakes. I thought my hourly rate was in the multiple thousands. And I was like, so why would I put this money away and invest it when I can grow my poker career, grow my hourly rate, and invest in myself? I thought I was just much higher ROI. And while that very well may have been true, there's diversification of risk. Essentially, I was putting all of my risk into poker, and which is inherently pretty risky. And as we saw in this last example, eventually putting so much of my risk into business. Whereas if I had set aside call it a third of my income each year, put it somewhere that I couldn't touch, I would, always have that to fall back on. But what I actually want to talk about more than that, for most 21-year-olds who aren't playing high stakes poker and don't have a whole bunch of money to invest, is that you should be investing in yourself. I think investing in yourself at 21 is hugely important. And there are two main areas where I see doing that. One is in your skills. When you're young, you generally can't make a lot of money per hour, but you can use those hours to acquire skills. Acquiring skills is something that gives you so much leverage, because at 21, you have so many years to leverage those skills. Once you're at a point in your career where you're extremely busy with a job that's very demanding, or you're not employed like myself, but you have a lot of high value things that you really want to do, there's not so much time. It's now expensive for me to invest my time to learn new skills. I have to essentially lose money on hours that I could have been doing something else in order to gain skills. But at 21, when your hourly is not that high, opportunity cost is not that high, spending time acquiring skills is hugely valuable. I would also spend money acquiring skills at that age too, because anytime, you're going to buy a course or hire somebody to consult you on something, it's time and money that go into it. What you have is a lot of time and a lot of years to leverage your acquired knowledge. I would invest some money as well. Another thing that I wish I invested in more early was physical health. When I was in my 20s, I was mostly sitting behind my computer. I was not thinking about what I was eating, and I was usually not exercising. Sometimes I was. When you're young, your body is stronger and it's more flexible, it's more resilient. You can gain a lot of strength, gain a lot of endurance without as many injuries as you can when you start when you're older. Yes, you can build those habits when you're older, absolutely. And there are more obstacles, both with work and family, physical abilities. Building those habits and building that physical strength and endurance when you're younger, so that later in life, you're just maintaining those habits, you're just maintaining that physique, if that's your goal, becomes a lot easier. Bottom line is, when you're making a lot of money, that's the time to invest your money. When you're early in life, that's the time to invest in yourself. So maybe the biggest advice I would give to my 21-year-old self is to seek mentors, seek wisdom. At 21, I felt like I was one of the most mature 21-year-olds that I knew. I still knew so little, and I still thought that I knew so much more than I did, which is really common when we're young, right? And we think that we understand so much about our lives and the world, and that older people, yes, they've got wisdom, they've learned things, but that doesn't apply to the new world and things that I know now, because they're they're out of touch with what's cool. They're out of touch with a lot of things, probably. When I was 21, it was actually the first time that I got knowledge from a mentor that I wasn't seeking, that I got accidentally. So I decided to make the switch from sit and goes to no limit hold'em cash games. And I was like, well, I need to get a cash game coach to speed this up, which is what I always believed in investing myself, which I'm thankful for. So I went on the 2+2 forums and was looking at threads on coaching, who people recommended, and one name kept coming up. It was Tommy Angelo. And after reading some reviews, several people saying he was great, I was like, okay, I'm going to hire Tommy. And so I reached out to Tommy Angelo, hired him for, I don't remember the cost. It felt like it was expensive at the time, but hired him for a kind of crash course weekend. So it was a long weekend. We met in Las Vegas. I was really excited to learn cash game poker. So we meet in the Mirage. He's older than I thought he was going to be. All my coaches so far were other online players that were just teaching me the skills they learned playing online poker. But Tommy was a live poker player. So Tommy and I sat down at an empty poker table at the Mirage, and he pulled out this big packet of, 100 some pages. And this was an outline of what we were going to cover over those 3 days. I was, at this point, a little skeptical, but people said he was great. He's a no limit cash player. I need to learn no limit cash strategy. I don't know any. I'm really excited to learn no limit cash strategy. So if they say he's great, let's do it. I'm all in. Do you know, of those 100 some pages, how many covered no limit cash game strategy? 0. Tommy didn't teach me anything that I wanted to learn that weekend, but he taught me so many of the things that I needed to learn about being a poker player. He taught me how to manage my career. He taught me how to game select, how to manage my bankroll. He taught me how to handle losses. He taught me how to prepare mentally, prepare strategically. The funny thing is, if I knew what he was going to teach me, I wouldn't have hired him. And that's kind of the lack of wisdom of a 21-year-old who thinks they know what they need to learn. But the reality is, people who have been there, even though he wasn't there crushing online poker, he had been a poker player 15, 20 years. He had made a career out of it. And people who have been there have so much wisdom to impart. That's wisdom that you need to be seeking when you're young. You need to just accept that there are a lot of things you know, and there's a whole world of things that you don't know. But this isn't just advice for 21-year-olds. I'm 38 years old today, and I've sought out mentors throughout my adult life. It's been hugely beneficial, and I still do it today. I have a bunch of coaches right now, actually. Here's the full list. Okay, so I have 2 mental game coaches. I have 1 fitness nutrition coach. I have 1 coach who I'm going to call life career coach. And then I have a social media, mainly Twitter coach. The best coaches are people who have succeeded in an area you want to succeed in and care about how you do. They care about your well-being. They care about your future. They really want to help you because that's just who they are, not because they want the paycheck. If you have to pick only one of these, I would pick the person who really cares about helping you, but hasn't had the success that you dream of, over somebody who's had the success that you dream of, but is just cashing a paycheck, doesn't really care how you progress, doesn't actually care if you have wins, just, is going to clock in and clock out. Even that coach is worth something to you and can teach you something. But I would urge you to seek coaches who care above all else. I hope you found that really helpful. Some of the things that I learned from Tommy, as well as some of my other coaches, I put together in addition to many of the things that I've learned across the course of my career on my own. I threw together in this ebook called Poker Mindset Strategy, and it's free. You can check the description, and I hope that helps you too. I'd love to hear what landed with you, whether you wish you knew some of these things at 21, or whether you are 21 or near that age and are actually going to take to heart some of these lessons and apply them to your life. That would make me very pleased. So let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, take care and good luck.